Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Avi, and I help run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Laurell K. Hamilton's new book and series, A Terrible Fall of Angels, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Searching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until after 94 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers and authors such as Laurell, we wouldn't be here today. Tonight, we're thrilled to have with us Laurell K. Hamilton for the launch of her new book, A Terrible Fall of Angels. Laurell K. Hamilton is the author of the #1 New York Times bestselling Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series and the Mary Gentry Fate Detective series. With more than 40 novels published and 20 million books sold, Laurell continues to create groundbreaking fiction inspired by her lifelong love of monster movies, ghost stories, mythology, folklore, and things that go bump in the night. Laurell lives in St. Louis with her family. In her free time, Laurell trains in Filipino martial arts with a specialization in blade work. Learn more about Laurell at laurellkhamilton.com. Just one quick housekeeping note. This is a spoiler-free zone. Please do not put spoilers in the comments. If your question has a spoiler, please skip it. Joining Laurell in tonight's event will be Events Director at Strand Books, Sabir Sultan. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Laurell K. Hamilton to the stage.
There I am.
Hi.
Hi, Sabir.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Laurell. I read the book over the weekend and I tore through it. It was a bad time to visit family, I will say.
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to get a chance to talk to people. I mean, the book only officially came out yesterday, so it's very new on the shelves, and I get to talk to everybody about it.
Well, I think that provides a good entry point for the event. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a description of the book for those who haven't had a chance to read it yet.
All right. Zaniel Havelock, Detective Zaniel Havelock, his world is our modern world, but the difference is that heaven and hell have a treaty and have agreed not to do Armageddon. But part of what keeps that from happening is the Heaven and Hell Squad, the Metaphysical Coordination Unit, which Zaniel's a part of, because there are rules how many demons can come up from hell. Sorry, it's been a long day. Heaven and hell gets a little confused at the end of the day.
It does.
And what they can do, how much they can torment, and if they break the rules, break the law, then you call the Metaphysical Coordination Unit. If any angelic beings are involved, Zaniel is the specialist because he is an angel speaker. He is the only angel speaker to graduate's not quite the right word, be fully trained as an angel speaker at the College of Angels and leave voluntarily. Everyone else that's ever left has either failed their training, gone insane, or died trying to commune with the highest order of angels. Because one of the interesting things of doing the research for this book is that if you look at angels in the Old Testament, they're frightening. They're absolutely frightening. They're closer to Cthulhu, or H.P. Lovecraft stories than they are to what we all think of as angels. So the higher order of angels, not everybody's sanity will survive it. So you have the angel speakers that can intercede and talk to the angels for you, so that the rest of us don't lose our mind or our life trying to talk to the angels ourselves.
Well, the hierarchy of angels in particular had me fascinated. The cherubim, the seraphim. And so I was looking it up on Wikipedia, and I was just sort of curious how you went about doing your research.
Well, let's see. Book one. This was actually turned out to be my favorite one. I usually start my research with anything that says a dictionary or encyclopedia in it, because it's usually really a good overview. Also, you have to have a good bibliography in the back. If it doesn't have a good bibliography, I won't use it for research, because they don't cite their sources. If you don't cite your sources, I can't use you. So started with dictionary, and then we have Angels, Companion of Magic. One of the later books I got, Silver Raven. I always get her name wrong. Silver Ravenwolf, because her name's too close to a character in the book. And had the pleasure of meeting her in person once. This is actual magic you can do with angels yourselves. Let's see. Angels, the Encyclopedia of Angels, Rosemary Ellen Gully. I should say people's names. Let's see. The first one is Gustav Davidson, a Dictionary of Angels, including the fallen angels. And then Angels A to Z. I just grabbed, The Keys of Solomon the King. It's esoteric magic in the Solomonic magic. And then you also have all the people in the Bible. And that's just what I could grab a few minutes before we started. So the stack of research books I've got is probably taller than my waist at this point. And one of the interesting things is that no one source, because a lot of the good ones go back to earlier sources. They go back to very earlier sources, and they don't agree. They don't agree who's fallen and who's not.
Oh, that's
so
fun.
A lot of the names are on both lists depending on what source you're talking to or reading. And so you have one list will say that somebody's in the upper level of hierarchy of heaven, and you have another one that says it's one of the rulers in hell. So it goes back and forth. It's fascinating to me that nobody agrees on some of the angels. So you have to be careful when you're researching angels, figuring out who's where, because sources don't agree at all.
Well, so what drew you to angels in the first place?
Actually, I don't know, honestly. The one day, and I swear I wasn't reading, watching, or anything about angels, but one day a line came into my head, and it was one line. I didn't know what it went to. I thought it was a short story, to be honest. And I put it up on I put it on a sticky note, put it up on my wall in my office, and I thought, I'll get another idea. It'll rub up against it. You know, I don't know. Maybe it'll never get used. Sometimes it happens. So almost 10 years later, I sat down and wrote much of the beginning chapter, and it's not very changed, actually, in the book. And by the time I almost finished the first chapter, I went, oh my God, it's a book. It's not a short story. And that was about 2014. And at that time, I was still actively writing the Mary Gentry series, as well as the Nita Blake series. And I went, I can't do 3 series. I can't do 3 series at once. No, you must not do this to me. And so I put it in a folder and put it away. And then around 2020, it started saying, oh, I think I'm ready to be written. Okay. And then, of course, the world did what the world did.
Yes.
And I think if I had written A Terrible Fall of Angels before 2020, it would have been a darker, harsher book if I'd done it 10 years ago. But by the time we all got to the point where we were and where I was actually writing the book, needed hope, needed something lighter, needed some angels. We needed angels. And maybe that's why I didn't write it before. Maybe it was waiting until it was ready, until we all needed more angels in our lives. The angels are always there. I mean, angels are always there. Our guardian angels, they're always there. But we really do have to give them permission. They really do. We have free will. They don't. We have to say, that's what prayers do. It doesn't just reach out to deity. It literally gives your angels permission to help you.
Oh, that's such a lovely way of thinking about it. Yeah.
Well, the phrase I put in, one of the phrases, I try to put a phrase per book for signing, so I don't have to, so I can do more people and not have to sign, entire paragraphs every time I do a book. So angels up, and it was a phrase that Zaniel and his closest friends in the College of Angels when they were younger came up with. They would say angels up, and it's like, angels, come on, let's go. We got to do this. And that's really it. The angels are there to help us, and you get your angel and they reach out to somebody else, and are we our brother's keeper? Not exactly, but we are supposed to help each other. And that's what's been so hard about the last 15, 16 months. We are being told to separate, not help each other. We can't be there in person. And that's really what our strength is. We're a group animal. We need each other. Even those of us who are fairly hermit. A lot of us. I'm not an extrovert, but I'm more of an extrovert than I thought I was, even with my family here.
Same, 100%.
You don't realize how much social interaction you get just going to the store, talking to a clerk. And you don't realize how much you miss just seeing other people. I was talking to friends and some younger friends, and I said, and this is why you read the diary accounts back in the 1800s and earlier, that when a stranger came to town, they asked, can you tell stories? Do you sing? If you could sing or tell stories, then people would gather around. They would pick the biggest house and you would all get around and they would tell news that has come. Because remember, most people didn't travel in a lifetime 20 miles from their houses.
Yeah. So how did word spread? It was just people carrying the word?
It was just people carrying the word. Yes. And people carrying the word. And passenger pigeon was actually used. People would tie it around the legs of passenger pigeons if they had that. My understanding is some of the churches did that. They would keep doves or pigeons and they would send them back and forth to carry messages. But most of the time, yeah, you just had to travel there. And so here we get, within a few minutes, everybody knows about everything. There's somebody there to tell us. And it was completely opposite. And this lockdown, we've had the online, so we've known this, but it used to be that if a stranger came, there was no hotels. There was no place for them to stay. If somebody didn't open their house to them, they had nothing. They had nowhere to go. And so hospitality and the rules of hospitality were incredibly important because there was no other option. And the idea that, be careful and entertain strangers, it may be God, it may be the angels. Treat them. That's one of the big things that you have to treat them with respect because you never know who it's going to be. And it's a way of reminding us all that, everybody should be treated as if they can tattle to God about us and treat them well. But you start to be happy to just see strangers, people you don't even know. You're going, look, it's a face that's not in the house with me. And so it's really, I've been making notes, hopefully a short story, set in a time when you got news like that and everything. And because I've thought, how at the mercy of the person telling you would you be?
Oh, that's interesting. That's such a good germ for a story.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if they're not honest, you have no way of checking.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I cannot wait to read that story. Hopefully it's a story, not a series.
I think it's a story. I can't, even my productivity can't keep up with too many books. My editor's already going, how many books did you want to do? Because they have to edit it. They have to go through. And through most of the last editing Sucker Punch, editing Raphael, they were remote. They were still at their homes. They still didn't have everybody. Oh. And it was still all done when, they were finally partially back in the office when they were editing A Terrible Fall of Angels.
Oh my God.
So they don't have their staff. They don't have their regular stuff. And so it was harder on them because at least I'm here in my office.
Oh, which is the loveliest shade of blue.
Thank you. I write better around blue or green. And some studies say that people do write better around it. Bright colors like red, I think red, I don't know, some of the other colors, they spark ideas. But for continuous creativity and production, blues and greens, for me, though, blue is even better. And, my childhood bedroom was blue, so I wrote for the first time there. That may be part of it, but I always write better if I can paint the walls some shade of blue.
Well, that is such a good tip for our audience members who are beginning to submit some questions. So we can do a quick pivot, I think, there now that we have
cool.
the ground set. So our first question is from Judy Sullivan, who asks, does the series follow the pre-Dante version or post version of Hell, aka removal from the deity versus an actual place?
It has to be Dante. There's really no hell as we think of it, with demons and punishment and everything. There's just nothing. Dante invented it, pretty much. The church jumped on board because it was a way of scaring people to be church. The pagans were winning. Nobody wanted to join the church. We get to do festivals and all sorts of things. And so the church wanted a way to make people join the church. And Dante wrote this terrifying tale of hell and all the different horrible things that can happen to you. And the church just took that whole cloth and have used it ever since to scare people. They have. So yes, definitely Dante, after Dante. Because originally hell, you're right, the questioner is really right. Hell was just separation from God, separation from deity. And modern people, and when I say modern, I mean like Dante's era, didn't think separation from deity was enough of a punishment, so they weren't wanting to join the church.
The church scheme apparently worked very well.
Nothing like an eternity of being roasted alive or tortured to make you go, oh yeah, we'll join you. Yeah, that'll do it.
So our next question is from Alicia, who asks, how was it writing almost exclusively from a male's perspective? Did you do any extra research to help embody the role?
I have spent the last few years asking the most just outrageous questions. I mean, my poor long-suffering husband and any close male friend or anybody, I had this list of questions because I went, okay, because a lot of people complain when male writers do female characters and get it wrong. And I thought, well, I need to be held to the same standard, so I have to get this right. And so any question I could think of, anything that didn't make sense to me. I also read some books. I can't say some of the research books I would, because some of them would give away some of the later backstory for Zaniel. But I did read something from particularly male perspective in certain areas, some books and everything. But I finally realized, as a writer, you notice people all the time. You notice people all the time. You're a noticing kind of person. You just kind of collect bits, and somebody walks past you and go, well, they're really graceful, or they're really clumsy, or that's a really bright jacket, or that's something I've never seen. What is in their hand? You always notice bits and bobs. And I've kind of been collecting for a long time, and I write male characters and write them well. I just never wrote from this. This is my first person perspective. And strangely enough, one of the things that helped me the most with Zaniel was something that happened by accident years ago, and long before I thought about writing this. I mean, we had a very dear friend that was 6'3", a foot taller than me, and he was very handsome, and he was very friendly. And I said, you're just always so happy. How can you be? Because I'm at heart a very gloomy person. I really am. I work at it, but my natural bent is very pessimistic. And I said, you just always seem so cheerful. How do you manage that? And he says, if I don't smile, people are afraid of me. And I said, no. He says, walk ahead of me and I'll stop smiling and watch the difference. And so I walk enough ahead, I look back, he stops smiling, and women start clutching their purses. They start trying to walk a little bit away so he couldn't, out of reach. Men start looking uncomfortable, doing that math, if he decided to be violent, he's a really big guy. And then he smiled again, and the women smiled back, and the men relaxed. And he caught up with me, and I said, oh my God, that's amazing. I never understood that. He says, you can look mean. You can look cranky. Nobody's afraid of you automatically. He says, if I look like I'm having a bad day, people are scared of me. And when Zaniel decided to be tall, I remembered that, and I thought, okay, he's a foot taller than me. And I realized that one of the reasons that my character Vanita and myself have spent the lifetime walking into a room and having to defend ourselves, having to say, yes, we can do the job. Yes, we are tough enough to do this, especially in male-dominated fields, is because we're small. And if there's an emergency, you do not automatically look at a small woman and think they can hold their own. But someone who is male and 6'3" walks in, and you assume that in an emergency, they can handle themselves. They will be strong enough and they will be tough enough. And in fact, if you gave Anita's dialogue to Zaniel, he would come off as a bully. Because he's 6'3" and he's already big and intimidating, and people are kind of nervous around him anyway. And she gets to tough talk because she has to prove she's tough. Zaniel, it was actually very relaxing to write Zaniel, because he walked into the room and never had to prove anything to anybody. He never had to sit there and go, yes, I can do this job, and yes, I can do the emergency, and yes, people just looked to him and assumed it. It was so relaxing to not have to prove ourselves every time he walked into a room.
Yeah, that sounds like such a pleasant change.
It really is, and it's really made me less aggravated at a lifetime of having to prove myself in so many male-dominated areas. It's really made me kind of chill and go, you know what? They have a point. Evolutionarily speaking, if there's a physical emergency, people are not going to look at someone who's 5'3", even a man who's 5'3" as opposed to 6'3". If you're looking around a room for somebody to help you lift something in an emergency, who you're going to look at is somebody who looks like they're physically able to do it. It's not just sexism. It's literally size. And that was really interesting to finally, a lifetime of being upset about this. And I finally go, oh, okay. But it's not in the front of people's heads, it's in the back. Just like my friend smiling, people smiled back. When he looked cranky and he was so big, they were afraid. It's not in the front of their heads, it's in the back. So they don't know they do it.
Oh, now that's interesting. That it's just this like subliminal back of the head response.
Yes, absolutely.
And then as a slight pivot, you said something along the lines of when Daniel decided to be tall, and I was curious about that.
Zaniel, most of my characters choose their height. They just do. I don't care. They just need to be tall enough to do whatever they're doing. But Zaniel wanted to be tall. Now, how tall? We debated back and forth. He was 6 feet, but I said, how much over 6 feet? And we went very tall. And I thought, no, come on, that's too tall. Let's tone it back. And we finally settled that we debated for a long time between 6'2" and 6'4". 6'2" and 6'4". We kind of go back and forth. Finally settled at 6'3" because it's only a foot taller than me. I could remember it. Really, that's what it came down to. It was easier to remember. And he chose his height, and most characters do. Strangely enough, most male characters prefer to be tall, and the ones who don't care if they're tall are much more relaxed and much more just easy about themselves. But most of the male characters prefer to be tall. Female characters just have a preference for height, but they don't usually have a preference of what height.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and some people come with their physicality. They come exactly who they look like, and I don't have to work at it. They just come. Their hair, their eye, they pick their ethnicity, everything. Some characters change back and forth, and you kind of sit there and go, well, and you'll write them for a little bit and goes, does this work? It doesn't work. Back up. Does this work? Back up. Does this work? Back up. And you know you've hit on it when it suddenly works. Like, I don't know if it's a giveaway. It's a minor character, but the character of McGregor the Younger He went back and forth quite a bit. How tall he was, what his background was. But when it finally came together, he just was there. And we'll be seeing more of him. I've made notes. We'll be seeing more of him on stage. Yeah.
I'm excited for that. I found him interesting.
He really is, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I know more about him than you do because I've made notes and I know more of his background, so I can't share. But yes, he is interesting. And I knew that Zaniel's character viewpoint, his voice was right when the rest of the cast came around them. That's actually how I know with a first-person narrative for me. When I've got their voice right, other characters, good characters, come and collect around them. Until I hit it right, the secondary cast doesn't work. It's like they don't play well. They don't have any chemistry.
Okay.
It's like casting a movie or a play. You know, everybody may be good individually, but it doesn't mean they play off of each other well.
And it's all about that bounce back.
It has to be. It really has to be. Yeah.
Our next question is from K. Morris, who asks, across all your works, how do you keep up with the world building? Is there ever any confusion for the worlds when a subject speaks to you?
I know that's the question, but does she mean between the books worlds? I wonder. If she means, does she mean between the book worlds, or does she mean within the book itself? And
I'm going to decide between the book worlds, how you balance the creation and sort of not confusing them or overlapping them in any sense.
well, for the Anita Blake series, I've been doing it for decades, so it's like friends. It's like different friend groups. The Mary Gentry in her world, Anita Blake in her world, they're both friends, like friend groups. Well, you don't confuse your friends. So I don't actually get them confused. Not once I've...
Fair.
And for Zaniel and his world, I don't get confused. I really don't. Every once in a while, I'll have an idea that's in the other world while I'm writing one book get really, 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 really loud. And then every once in a while, it'll create what I call a creative log jam. And the book that was going great guns will slow down to a crawl, and I will finally go, fine, I will give you a day. And I will sit down and I will write that other idea in the other world, the other character, for a day. And then the book Micah came out of that. A whole book, a whole surprise book. I gave it a day, and then I thought, oh my God, if I give you 2 days, you'll be done. I've never written a book in that creative rush before. It was really, I've done short stories that way, but this was the only book that did that. And it totally interrupted one of the Mary books. And then I had to go back to it after I finished it. So ideas will do it, but the voices themselves, no. Though when I first sat down to write Mary Gentry, the Anita Blake series was still very PG. And so I'm writing the first Mary book, and Jean-Claude peers over my shoulder from Anita and goes, "You had this and you didn't offer me any." It's like, really? But that's one of the few times. Most of the time the characters, no, I don't. Maybe that's why I write series books, because I don't have that kind of confusion. It stays clear for me.
That's interesting. And K. Morris verified that was the correct question.
Yay.
As a slight pivot off of that, we have a question from someone anonymous who asks, are there vampires, werewolves, and fairies in Zaniel's world?
I think we did. I think we had Dr. Paulson say that there were fae. I think he remarked upon them, and I actually thought I put it in the book, but it ended up getting cut. But Detective Stiltskin is actually part of I don't know if fae is the right term, but part of the that kind of thing from a different part of the country, the world. So he is part. So yes, there are fae. And vampires and werewolves there are, but we probably won't see them. Just like we haven't seen many angels in Anita's world or many fae in Anita's world, because we do so much of it in the other series, we probably won't cross over much.
Okay. And that does bring up, so there is a mix of almost mythologies in the book. Like there's witches, we have angels, demons. And so how did you decide which of those to mix in and which of those not to keep? Or is it just the world was naturally formed?
The world just formed that way. I knew that I wanted to make sure that it was equal, that it wasn't, when I talk demons and angels, a lot of people said, well, oh, it's Christian, or it's the people of the book. It's Christian, Judaism, and Islam, because they share the angels. It's the same angels. If you don't know, it's the same angels across the board. And I said, no, there are flying messengers from deity going back as far as we know. That is not just people of the book. That is just something that's there. The angels aren't a specific faith. The angels just are. They're messages from deity, and it's not like a particular faith has their entire attention. It doesn't work like that. So I wanted to be very clear that there were a lot of different faiths, and that it wasn't the people at the College of Angels who are trained at the College of Angels and never leave the College of Angels. They are prejudiced against other faiths, but the angels are not.
Oh, interesting. And then along those lines, we have a question from Liz who asks, why do you think there aren't more fantasy/urban fantasy books about angels in general?
I don't know. In most of the ones that I have read, or even looked at, it's like they're just people with wings. And I'm sorry, if you're just going to make people with wings, that's not an angel. That's a person with wings. You need a different mythologies. Just don't drag angels into it. Make up something else. One of my big bugaboos is if you're going to create something that is mythological, then make it mythological. Don't just make it a person with. So many people's vampires are just people with fangs. They aren't really otherworldly, or if they are, it's not consistent. If you're going to do shapeshifters, then you should research real animals. If you don't research real animals, then it's just people with extra powers, and that's not. It's real. Do your research, people. Do your research. Do your world building. That's what it's all about. Make it yours. Research what you can find and then make it yours. Don't just slap on some horns or slap on some wings or slap on some extra stuff and they're just people with those bits and think that you've actually created something mythological or magical. That's not it.
Wow. And then let's see, for our next question, it's from Calvin, who says, what are Zaniel's primary weapons, physical or otherwise, and his special skills?
I have just blanked on the gun I finally decided on for him, his primary carry gun on duty. Because making him 6'3", one of the reasons that I chose Anita to be 5'3", and she was okay with that, and Mary is 5 feet even, is that this hand is what I can take weapons shopping with me. I don't have to borrow anybody. They're my size. So it's easy. I go into the gun store or I go in and look at knives. It fits this hand. Zaniel is 6'3". He's much bigger than me. He has a bigger hand. So I was always going to bigger people that and going, all right, what fits your hand? And it's FN. I think it was one of the, I should know this. This is really going to bug me.
I remember it was not a Glock.
I don't like Glocks. And just come at me. If you are a Glock fan, that's fine. I don't like them because coming right out of the thing, they tear up my hands. And all of you say the same thing. All the Glock fans say the same thing. Well, you can get a new grip put on. I feel about getting a new grip on a brand new gun so it doesn't tear up my hand or it fits my hand better the way I feel about buying a piece of clothing at the store. If I have to hem it to wear it, or, all right, I'm short. I do have to hem things. But if I have to alter it to wear it, then I don't want to buy it. I want a gun that fits me off the shelf. I may modify it later. My husband, I love him. FN 509. I gave him the bigger FN 509, and and then I am buying the smaller version. And that way I can take it and shoot it and get familiar with the gun. And I do love the FNs. I love them. All the ones that I've shot, I love them all. But I picked the one that was bigger for his hand. And I've got the baby version, the next size down from his. That was my compromise. I would get him, he would have the bigger version that fits the bigger hand. I would get the one size down that fit my hand. That way I could shoot and be familiar with it, and we could both have great guns. So, yeah, and yes, I got the 503. He's got the 509. I've got the 503. FNs are nice, yes. I love them. And so that's his main carry. And then he's also going to get more blades as time goes on, but not so much in this book. And also a knife as a tool is one thing. Carrying a knife as a police officer as a weapon is a different thing. You can carry it as your absolute last drag, like you've lost your gun and they're going to kill you, and that's fine. But you just have to be careful on what you carry as an officer. It's not like being in the military where you're expected to have to defend yourself more often. A lot of police officers go their entire careers and never pull a weapon out, which is really weird. If I hadn't researched real police work, I would not have understood that the stuff you see on TV is overly dramatized because it's boring. One of the things you do most in police work that I do not do, because I made Anita so that she is, she's a U.S. Marshal, but she's with the preternatural branch, so there's not a lot of paperwork. I may have to actually do paperwork with Zaniel. And if I do, there is so much paperwork for a police officer. Oh my God. And I've had some of them be very honest over the years and say, there are people out there that are alive today because it was close to quitting time and I didn't want to do the paperwork. Or there are people that got away with minor stuff because I didn't want to do the paperwork for the arrest. I would have missed my anniversary.
Oh.
There's that much paperwork.
That is a terrifying amount of paperwork.
It is a terrifying amount of paperwork. And you have to be really careful because anything you write down can be used against you if something goes wrong. So not only is it a lot of paperwork, but there's a lot of stress. No officer's ever said this to me, but I would find it stressful. I would find it stressful that everything I write down will be scrutinized to that degree, and there's so much to write and so many forms to fill out. Wouldn't that be nerve-wracking?
Oh, it would be horrifying. I could not imagine, and I prefer not to, quite honestly.
Right? So Zaniel unless I can think of a way around it, Zaniel may have to do paperwork. So we're going to have at least a few scenes where he's just doing so much paperwork. and most of the time they leave that out of police procedurals, but I have to do it at least once because it's the one thing I don't show on paper in a book, how much paperwork there is.
Yeah, and it's such a fun inversion of like you as a writer writing about the writing of paperwork.
Oh, I would be terrible at it because one of the reasons I didn't stay with journalism in college is that it's boring to report just the facts, and I kept embellishing. So I realized early on that journalism wasn't for me because I just couldn't behave myself. I would go, it'd be much more interesting if this happened, and my teacher's going, but that's not what journalism is. That's creative writing, and you got to stop that. So I knew better than to try journalism. Yeah.
So our next question is from Aaron, who asks, what music helped you write this book?
It was really hard to find music for Zaniel. He didn't like anything that I normally write to. And every character, sometimes every book will find its own music. But all the stuff I normally listen to, all the harder stuff, Zaniel wouldn't write to it. And I thought, oh, please, come on. Give me a break. Just talk to me. What do you want to listen to? Eventually, we ended up with Wallflowers, Gin Blossoms, and the 2 new Taylor Swift albums. The ones she wrote during quarantine.
Oh.
I know, right? And it wasn't until he picked the musical. I pick modern music, I pick a musical, and usually some kind of Christmas music on really bad days. Christmas music is what I listen to if nothing else is working. So he picked South Pacific as the musical to write to. And the moment he picked South Pacific, I said, oh, you're a romantic. You're an old-fashioned romantic. That's what's wrong. That's what's wrong. So you don't want to listen to music where we scream all the time about, how horrible the world is. You want romance. And the 2 Taylor Swift albums also are very, very old-fashioned romance for the most part.
Yeah, no, that's definitely their vibe. It's nostalgic almost. And
Zaniel, I think because he was raised in the College of Angels, which is like a cloistered order. So, he went at age 7 and he never saw a computer. He never saw a television set. I think there was one that would play videos at one point that you could go in and specially watch, but there was only select stuff. So he really was raised in a very, very old-fashioned environment. So he's not very modern, or he wasn't raised that way. And he was raised by older instructors, teachers that, some of them were in their 80s. So he would have a very old-fashioned view of the world in many ways. And, he left the college I think I finally decided at 20. He left the college after great tragedy, just couldn't do it, walked away. And he didn't know how to fill out a form because they needed a computer. He didn't know how to do anything. And so, he's 6'3", athletic. He walks past a recruiter's thing, just walks past an army recruiter, and he goes, "Young man!" And he didn't know what else to do. That's how he ended up joining the army. He didn't know what else to do. He didn't know how to do anything in a modern society.
Well, that would have to happen if he was that removed where they didn't even have computers. Or, one computer in the library.
Well, no, at that time there were no computers. There was a video. There was something to play, educational videos or discs or something. And that was it. There may have been a computer somewhere, but he didn't have access to it.
Here. I have follow-ups, but that'll involve the next book, I think. So we do have a question from Kat who says, "You're always sharing pictures of nature. I know you went to college for literature, but is that what your degree is in?" And I tack on there, how does nature play a role in your writing?
Well, I have a degree in English with an emphasis on literature, and I have a degree in I'm a biologist. I've never earned my living as a biologist, but as many people with a biology degree say, many of us haven't. Unless you have really a master's, or really you need a doctorate, it's really hard to make a good living as a biologist. You can make a living, but how much money do you want to make to live on, kind of thing. I went to college for writing, but let's just say the head of the writing program and I had a fundamental disagreement on how things worked, and I was asked to leave the writing program 2 years in as a corrupting influence on the other students. I didn't write sex, I didn't write anything like that, but I did write genre. And I had gotten into the writing program because I wrote a vampire story and kind of a Lovecraft imitation Lovecraft story. So they accepted me in. They knew what I wanted to write. But I would learn 2 years later that she thought she could cure me of wanting to write genre. because in one of the I tested out of a lot of early literature classes. I was in an upper level literature class with, I think, just a handful of other students, and writing class. And she announced that all genre was garbage and she would no longer accept it. I was such a pain in her tuchus by this time. She must have dreaded me raising my hand. So she said, all genres garbage and she won't accept anymore. And I raised my hand. She said, yes, Laurel. I said, well, it was a Christian college, a small Christian college, so I figured I was safe on this one. I said, how about C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia? Is that okay? And his science fiction? And she says, well, that's not garbage. I said, how about Tolkien? She said, okay, I'll give you Tolkien. And I said, well, then how about Shakespeare? What about Shakespeare? I said, well, you have the witches in Macbeth, and you have the ghost in Hamlet, and then you have A Midsummer Night's Dream is all about the fairies. And she gave me all that. Shakespeare, okay, not all genre. And I said, well, how about Dickens? What about Dickens? I said, well, A Christmas Story is nothing but a ghost story. Without the ghost, there is no story. And she agreed, she conceded. And then I pushed it, and I said, and Moby Dick is just a monster movie.
Yeah.
And she told me to shut up and sit down. And a few days later, she called me into her office, and she talked to me for over 2 hours, and she did everything she could to make sure I'd never write again. She sliced me, diced me, and told me I was awful, that I should give it up. And she had decided that if she couldn't cure me, because I kept writing genre, and I had half the class writing genre with me by mid-semester. One person was writing a Western, another person was writing romance, another person was writing high fantasy, another person was writing a mystery. I mean, half the class came on board my little rebellion. And so she decided she'd get rid of me, and I would not write again. I would not pick up a pencil or a computer keyboard for 2 years after that. And I went into the biology department. I had always loved biology. It was my second love. I went into the head of the department. I said, I have 2 years to get a biology degree. And I told them what had happened. And they said, well, there's no way to do that. I said, there has to be a way to do that. I only have money for 2 more years. So we have to do this. And the head of the department really worked with me. And there is a way to test for people who usually do remote learning, like trained at home in middle, like if your parents are scientists or something, you take tests and get college credit. I tested out of 2 years of biology, and I did it, but it was this huge memorization route, so I don't remember much of it. It didn't go into long-term memory, but I tested out. And so I got 2 degrees in 4 years. I have my biology degree and I have my English degree. I finished it out with literature classes. And I was going to be a field biologist. It was my second love. And I'd been told I couldn't write. So I was going to do that. And I got allergies to everything outside. I mean, adult onset allergies. I suddenly was allergic to cats. I was suddenly allergic to every furred animal. Anything I wanted to study, I was now allergic to. So had that not happened, I would have gone on to be a scientist, and I guess I wouldn't be here.
So how did you end up going back to writing then?
I write like I breathe. I can't help myself. And 2 years later, I started writing on the thing. And you know, what a horrible thing for her to have done to somebody who was, yes, you know, who trusted her, a young person who trusted her, and she had power over her. She never apologized, but the next year she did let people write genre. But she never apologized to me. And people say, well, have you sent her your books and shown her how your success is? But with Mary and Anita especially, you know, you don't understand. I've gone on to do exactly what she feared I would do. She didn't do it because she didn't think I could write. She did it because she thought I could write. I've gone on now to corrupt millions, you know, with my subversive ideas. And no, she meant to fix me, and if she couldn't fix me, she meant to destroy me.
You converted 1 million writers to urban fantasy, so like that alone is the achievement.
Yes, I hacked my way through the wilderness for you back when they didn't want mixed genre.
Well, so our next question is from Alicia, who says, I haven't received my book yet, but I love all the sneak peeks you have shared. You released a quote yesterday about even demons being offended when they are called pedophiles. Does Zaniel's world have a ranking system for sins committed? For example, does one sin outrank another, and does it ultimately decide the character's fate after death?
I think some sins are worse than others. I think it's in prison systems, pedophiles are the lowest of the low. Nobody wants to be called that, and so I kind of based it on that seems to be the lowest level of crime. You do not harm children, and not in that way. There is not a ranking system for sins. I mean, there is, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. And Dante made this up. It was total fiction, so I don't really want to stick with Dante. And because I don't agree with his ranking system. But remember, in Dante, if you were willing to go lower in hell than you deserved, all the way to the bottom, if you were willing to experience the tortures of every level below you, there is an out in Dante's hell. If you're willing to go and be tortured worse than you deserved, there is an escape at the end of hell in Dante. And when the church took Dante in, there's no escape.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, if you're going to steal all of it, you know?
That is a good rule of thumb.
And I'm pagan, so I'm pagan and I wasn't raised Christian. So a ranking system for things, for sins. I'm not sure. It's mostly the rule for us is do as thou wilt so long as thou harm none. And harming none includes yourself. So every decision you make should go through that filter. Does it harm anyone, including yourself? If it does, you shouldn't do it. And, and when you go, as far as sin, is it evil? Definition of evil. One of the definitions of evil is if you tell somebody that hurt you and they tell you they don't care and they keep doing it, that's evil. If you tell somebody that hurt you and they stop and modify their behavior, then they're not evil, they're uninformed.
Well, there's a lot of grace in that.
It's taken me a long time to get here, but yeah, one of the interesting things is the older you get, the more you fill out your life. You're like a car that gets an empty manual. You have a owner's manual that's not filled out at all, and you have to fill it out yourself as you go along. And one of the things as you get older, if you pay attention, some people will never be wise. If they live to 100, they will never be wise. That's just who they are. But if you pay attention, you can fill out your owner's manual as you go, and it is the best thing to start to know yourself better each year, every year.
No, that is like a wonderful process. Well, our next question is from Betsy, who asks, is there a book or books that you would suggest for someone interested in Wicca? And I might extend that at large to paganism.
My favorite book for beginning is Cunningham's Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner. Scott Cunningham. Scott Cunningham's Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner is where I would recommend anybody interested in Wicca start. It's a good open introduction. It's been around for a while, but it's still my favorite. If you want, that's where I started. That's where my husband started. And I just highly recommend that one.
And we do have a few random ones that I'm going to insert now.
Okay.
So we have Librata, who asks, and forgive me if that pronunciation was off, Librata, but they ask, what's your favorite musical?
Oh, I couldn't possibly choose just one. I love musicals. Absolutely love musicals. It used to be Fiddler on the Roof, and then I realized I've seen it so many. I got to see Topol in it. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but I got to see him do that performance on stage.
Oh.
And I haven't been able to watch it since. I've seen him on stage
Yeah.
doing the part. I'm done. He is that part. And his wife was played by the original actress that was in the movie. She'd grown up enough that she was his wife in this version. And everybody was it was such a brilliant performance, brilliant cast, that I can't watch the musical anymore. I just sit there and go, it's not Topol. Yeah. But, and beyond that, I mean, I have a thing I love Mandy Patinkin's voice.
Oh.
And his version, the version of Secret Garden that he was in, has some of the most amazing music in it. But some of the older musicals I love because you can sing them. You don't have to have an amazing voice, an operatic voice, to sing them. And as much as I love the music, sometimes it's nice to be able to sing along and not feel like you're destroying the music. Yeah. So South Pacific has a lot of good songs. My Fair Lady, Guys and Dolls. And before anybody says it, I know they're sexist. That's okay. I'm good with that. Because they were creatures of their time. And really, if you look at it, this is true. Another Thoroughly Modern Millie. Thoroughly Modern Millie. We were lucky enough to see the production that traveled the country of Thoroughly Modern Millie. It's based on the original movie with Julie Andrews. Amazing production. Oh my God, it was amazing. Dance numbers and new songs, and they'd rewritten it so that the love interest of one of the ladies was one of the Chinese immigrants, and it was just it was brilliant. And we knew some of the people. We knew somebody who worked another show, and he knew people in that, and they didn't make that much money crowding the country because I just think not enough people knew what the thing was about. But it was a brilliant, and I've still got the soundtrack. I listen to that periodically. I try not to write to it, because if I write to something, then it's wedded to that book, and I won't be able to listen to it for pleasure again as easily. And Kiss Me Kate is fun as well. And Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. I mean, I love musicals. I'm sorry, I really do. I love musicals, and the Shrek musical we were lucky enough to be able to see in person. We knew somebody was in the cast, and of course Hamilton. We were lucky enough to get tickets to Hamilton, and we were good friends with somebody who was in the cast at the time, and that's amazing. That really is revolutionary. I don't mean the war. I mean the way it was staged, the way it was costumed, and how they chose to integrate the chorus of dancers into small parts. And I mean, it's just the movement of it, the staging of it, the way everything comes together. I had never seen anything like it, and I wasn't alone. Of course, everyone said that, but to see it for yourself was really special. And we also the Aladdin. The Aladdin on Broadway was amazing. Again, very good friends with. I'm saying here, I don't like name drop, so, and that was really fun. But no, I love musicals. There's no such thing as just my favorite musical. It's, and I love to listen to a lot of musicals. Like I said, I pick one per book, but I've learned that then I can't listen to it for pleasure. So I'm really careful now. Some of my musicals, I sit there and I won't tie them to a book if I can help it.
Out of curiosity, is there any book you regret tying or any musical you regret tying to a book?
Breaking Benjamin, the band Breaking Benjamin, that I tied to a book years ago, and I still can't listen to it without thinking of that book. And I used to love the band. I would listen to it all the time, and I still can't. It's so tied to that book. And I listened to it for like it was at least 2 books, and I still can't listen to it for pleasure.
And then next in our series of questions is from Jonathan, who asks, will there be a sequel to your first book, Nightseer? A
lot of people ask that. There could be now. But when it first came out, it was my very first novel that I ever wrote. And I was lucky enough to sell my very first novel. Most people have trunk books, which is books they write that aren't good enough to publish, or they're good enough, but they're not good enough to be your first sale because they're not unusual enough. They don't break you out enough. But I was lucky enough to sell my very first novel. And it's very elves, dwarves, and dragons. It really shows that I was a gamer. And it's a good novel. I'm still happy with it. But it did not sell well enough, as most first novels don't, for my editor to want the second novel. And I did write a second novel. And he was probably right. It wasn't a great book, but he rejected it. It lacked a certain je ne sais quoi, which is French for that certain something, which basically means nothing. There was no way to edit to that. He didn't even offer me a chance to edit it. He just said no. Oh. And so because the first one hadn't sold enough. So there I was with the first series that I ever put together, dead in the water. I had an agent, I had one book out, and I didn't know if I'd ever have another. It was terrifying. And so my agent got me a last minute, I did a Star Trek book, work for hire. I did a TSR book, work for hire, Death of a Dark Lord, and Nightshade was the name of the Star Trek, the Next Generation Star Trek book I did. And paid the bills, but it wasn't mine. And I looked through my short stories and thought, is there a world in here I could find? There was a short story that was unpublished called Those Who Seek Forgiveness, and that was Anita Blake. Her last name was Black I think at the time, though. It would have to change by the time I published the short story and by the time I wrote the novel. I had changed her last name, but but because everybody's bought everybody else in publishing, they've all merged. The original house that had Nightseer is now under the same umbrella as the publisher I am with, and they actually have the rights to Nightseer. So they would, at one time, they would be happy to have let me do a sequel, but it's been so long since I wrote Nightseer, I do not know if I can write that character anymore. I mean, I was 24 when I started that book, and 29 when it was published. So I don't know if I could get back in that mindset. I hadn't written Anita yet. I hadn't written Mary yet. Hadn't written Zaniel. Hadn't had all these ideas. And so I don't know. I don't know if I could do a sequel. It would be a very different book now. It would be a very different book. And someday, my husband's been wanting me to do a sequel to that since we met. He came to a signing when I had like 3 books out. That's how we met. So he's been wanting a sequel to Nightseer the whole time.
Well, you married him. You might just have to do it.
No. There's no have to. I know it was planned to be a 4-book series. I can't do 5. I can't do 4 series. I can't. I don't want to keep saying can't, but I want to do a 10th Mary book. I want to do a 10th Mary book before I worry about anything else other than a second Zaniel book. And I'm doing Anita, book 29, then either second Zaniel, probably the second Zaniel book.
Well, along the lines of another Mary book, we do have another audience question, which says, I know you had said 2022 for more Mary, but I was wondering if the new Mary book was still on track.
Okay. I did not say 2022. I said I hoped.
Fair distinction.
And I'm sorry. I don't think any of us planned on the last 15, 16 months. It's put me a little behind. I put Raphael in. Everybody said they wanted more stories, so I thought, okay, I can do more stories. But I had to be a short book. So Raphael was supposed to be a short book. It ended up being too long. I could have actually had it be a main book, but I didn't. I planned on it being short. And the next Mary book has to be a big book. It's going to have to be long. So it can't be quick, poked in between books. It's going to have its own chunk of time. So I don't think it's going to be out in 2022. I just don't see how it can be. So I'm sorry. It will probably, I actually know the book you're getting in 2022 is the 29th Anita novel because I'm writing it. and I have to get it to them by November 1st for you to get it next summer. And so unless I like completely am muse driven and magic stardust sprinkles down upon me, the chance of you getting 2 books in 2022 is slim, I'm afraid to say.
Oh, and you also answered our next audience question, which was from Laura, who asked, can we get an update on the next Anita book?
Next summer for the next Anita book. And yeah. So yeah, bringing her family, she's going to meet some of her family. We're going to get to see some of her family finally. And it's not pleasant. She's very estranged from her family. So it's not a Hallmark moment. We're not having fun with it.
Oh. And then our next question is from Laura and brings us back to A Terrible Fall of Angels. And I'm going to say as a parenthetical statement, this does make your point about not doing 4 series, the bouncing back. But Laura asks, I'm going to rephrase this a bit. In terms of the laws in the world of A Terrible Fall of Angels, how did you figure out the laws as applied to the magical characters and what counts as illegal?
Taking life is always illegal. I mean, that's just across the board. You're not allowed to kill people. You're allowed to do self-defense, but if you're a demon or an angel, you don't have to do self-defense against a human being. You can just go poof and be gone. So, possession is against the... You're allowed to possess a human temporarily, but you're not allowed to keep them. That's considered, that's against the rules. You can't figure out how to keep them. You can't stay too long. But what's illegal is pretty much the same thing. You're not allowed to kill people. You're not allowed to take their stuff. And in some ways, how a demon possessing a human body is it's kidnapping.
Yeah.
It's sort of kidnapping, except you're driving the body instead of driving the body into a car. So really, the same things are illegal. We didn't get to see in this book, but there are types of demons that are not allowed to come up because they're just too horrendous. And we will be seeing more of that and discussing more of that as we get more background from the College of Angels and be upping the stakes about keeping the treaty between heaven and hell intact. Because, I'm sorry, we've set it up in a world with demons and angels. We're going to have to, at some point in the series, have some, Armageddon is going to have to be almost happening. It has to. There's just no way to avoid it. That has to be a plot point at some point. It has to be.
I'm so excited. So then our next question along those lines is from Rowan, who asks, what's your favorite type of angel and what's your favorite type of demon? And I think maybe this is based on the research aspect too.
I don't have a favorite type because a lot of the things disagree with each other. I know that the seraphim and the cherubim are really, really cool. I love their descriptions. It's so alien and otherworldly. They can appear in human form or humanoid form, but they're not supposed. But they don't have to be. They cherubim have multiple animal heads and multiple wings, and seraphim have like all these multiple eyes, and the descriptions of them are so other that it's just amazing. Probably Saint Michael and the archangels are my favorites. We haven't gotten to work with them much, but I really like them. And most people don't even know that there are 7 archangels. Now, no list agrees on who's all on. Most lists only agree on 4, which is Michael, Raphael, Uriel, and
Gabriel?
And Gabriel, yes. Jiminy Christmas. Forgetting Gabriel is like ridiculous. And then after that, filling out the 7 of the archangels, people don't agree. People don't agree on who's on the list. It depends on what source you're using. And in fact, a lot of people don't even know that there are 7. A lot of people think that there are only 2 or 3 or 4 max. Even people who have been raised Catholic, who I thought would know, more about angels, but angels really aren't big. Like, other than Saint Michael and Saint Gabriel, some Raphael for healing, and Uriel is most people don't even know. So it's just very interesting to me that angels, the church really, the early church turned away from angels because they were afraid the angels would be worshipped instead of. Angels kind of got put under that same umbrella to not worship anybody but God. It seemed too polytheistic when they were trying to be monotheistic in a world of polytheistic religions, I think. And so they were very careful with angels not being worshipped. In fact, the College of Angels and going to the angels as intercession, the way we do in Zaniel's world, would probably be frowned upon by the early church because it makes the angels too important.
Oh, that's fun.
It really was fascinating to get into, and how many disagreements. Michael and Gabriel are the only 2 that are mentioned by name in the Bible, I believe. Raphael maybe, but I should know this. I don't know. But Michael and Gabriel, there aren't a lot of angels named in the Bible at all.
And so, did that affect how you chose? And I'm going to actually incorporate a question from an audience member here, which is Adrian, who asks, does Lucifer appear in the series? But how you figured out which angels you wanted to incorporate from your research and which ones you didn't?
I knew my research didn't impact who I want to use and who I don't, but some of it is so diametrically opposed. You either believe this or that I'm still debating. One of the reasons that some of the angels didn't appear yet and some of the demonic didn't appear is that I'm still trying to decide which source I want to go with. And because they really are, I mean, literally you have one of the sources will say that this is a higher order of angel. Another source says this person is in hell. This angel is in hell, and it's demonic. Or, fallen angels are still angels. Never forget that. They aren't demons. They are fallen, but they are still angels, and they're not stripped of their powers. Their powers are changed and or corrupted, but they aren't stripped of them. And you have to be very careful. That's one of the things Zaniel and everyone says. When you're on angel detail, you must always remember that fallen are still angels. And demons are something else altogether. They are their own creation. But again, depends on who you read. Depends on who you read. Are devils their own thing, or are they fallen angels? If you do more research on some of this is based, then the idea of hell as we know it really came with Dante and around that time. So before that was just separation with God, but there have always been creatures in mythology with horns and hooves, but they weren't always bad guys. I mean, a lot of them were early deities like Pan, and again, the early church had to make them the bad guys because too many people would rather frolic in the woods with Pan than come to church on Sundays.
Yeah, and the goal was to get people into church.
A lot of old stories is people who would go fishing or something on Sundays instead of coming to church. There's a nobleman who went fishing instead of going to church, and he caught a strange fish, and he threw it either down a well or back in the river, and it turned into a dragon, a worm dragon, and it terrorized the thing. It was because he caught it on Sunday, and he should have been in church.
That's
so
amazing.
There were a lot of stories like that they had to make you obey the church. And I mean, Lucifer, if you read the Bible, is Lucifer really the devil? For sure? Are you sure? Read it over again. Are you sure? Or is it just propaganda and it's what you've been told? If you just read it over, it's not clear. It's really not clear who's who. And Satan was only an adversary. Satan was only, it was a title, not a name. Absolutely not, it was a title, not a name. It was somebody that was supposed to come and it was supposed to tempt you. But it was a title, not a name, originally.
You must have so much fun doing the research. These are just like such interesting stories and distinctions.
They really are, but because of how different, when you get into the older texts and stuff, it's so different from what we think of in modern day. I've got to decide. What side am I going to take? Am I going to try to rewrite the idea that Satan is not Satan? No, it's too ingrained. It's going to have to be a name, not a title. But originally, that's not what it was meant for. And so as I do more research, I have to go, okay, where did we decide what things meant? And do I want to stay with that, or do I want to try to go back to an earlier version of it? Do I want to rewrite it? And it's fascinating. The more I research, the more I go, and you have to decide. Once I decide on paper, then I have to stick to it. I have to stick to my own rules once I make them. But I am really trying to decide some things before I write the second book about what I want to do and how I want to choose it. Because once I've got it on paper, I'm stuck. I can't choose the other path and make it something else.
Oh, that is tricky. So our next question would be from Darla, who asks, could you give us a loose definition of a fallen angel?
It is traditional. One of the angels that followed Lucifer and did a war against God. And then ended up being cast out of heaven, and they chose to war against God, and they were punished by being cast into hell. It's very traditional. That is what a fallen angel. It's somebody who went against God and lost. So that's what fallen means. It means you went against God, and you can become a fallen angel in other ways, but I don't want to give away too much that will come out. An angel can still fall that doesn't fight against God now, because if you make angels aren't supposed to have free will, but some of them do. After the war, what we're going on is that God took back his free will and went, you guys can't handle it. We're going to go back to the way it was. But some of the higher orders of angels have more free will than the lower orders. But is it free will or is it God's plan? And how do you tell? Bad things happen for good purpose. If you read the book of Job, it's horrible. It better be a parable. I mean, God allows these horrible things to happen to this good person. And so is it God's plan, or is it free will? Do they really have free will, or are they doing what they're supposed to do anyway and they don't know it?
Well, as a pivot off of that, is there a God's plan in the world of Zaniel's?
Oh, I don't know. Zaniel doesn't know. If Zaniel doesn't know, I don't know. Not on this one. I'm sorry. I think God's plan is more hope. God's plan was the perfect way to do it. Everybody would be perfect. I believe the deity wants us to be happy, wants us to be perfectly happy, and there are ways for that to happen. But we have to listen to that still small voice in us. We have to really listen to ourselves, and we have to fight to be who we are and who we personally are. And I think that if we are our best selves, then that is God's plan. God wants, if God is a God of love, if deity really does want us to be happy, then we have to listen to that small, still voice in us. We have to ask our angels for help. And We have to follow the best course of our life. That doesn't mean that you're passive. It doesn't mean that you're always kind and gentle, because life is hard, and you have to be determined and stick to your guns, stick to what you want, what you need. But the thing is that so many people are conditioned to not believe themselves, to not listen to their own selves. They let society, they let their families kind of override them. If we're lucky, we end up with families that nurture us and want us to be the best version of us. But a lot of people keep forcing you into a box. I don't think God and Goddess are into boxes. I think they're into you doing the best version of yourself. But you've got to listen to the spark of divinity that's with you and not listen to all the outside noise. So individually, there's a plan. Every once in a while, I think if God could do it over, he might rethink this whole free will thing. But the idea was that he wanted, if you go back and read it, sorry, I am still getting noise on the phone. I keep thinking I've turned it off, but I haven't. The plan, he wanted companions. God was lonely. He wanted companions. He didn't want slaves. So we ended up with free will. Or did we? I mean, you put the tree in the middle of the garden and tell them not to eat. But you're God. Did you know I'm sorry. It's if you read it all, it's such deep philosophical ideas. I mean, have we gone off track or haven't we? And you read different philosophies and different deep thinkers on the Bible and other holy script in other religions, and there's some really deep stuff out there. And you sit there and go, I mean, you'll come through it and you'll just be dazed. You do some of the research and going, I can't put that in. That's deeper than I want to write a plot around. That's I'm gonna have to chew on that for a few months to be able to even digest it. It's this idea: are you or aren't you? Is there a plan? Isn't there? Are we doing the plan or are we not? Was this all planned? I mean, I have now read people that think all of that, and they have very good reasons for it. They've really thought and put a lot of philosophy and time and effort in religious texts. People have been trying to decide for centuries, what is God's plan, and is this still God's plan? The best minds of the ages have been thinking about this for centuries. I am not going to come down on any side on this one. It's because it's just so multifaceted. And either way you go, how much does it change? Either this is the plan and we move forward, or it's not the plan and we've gone off kilter, but it doesn't change what we do today.
No, because either it is the plan or it isn't, but we still are going along.
Yes. The thing is to live the best life you can live, to be the best person you can be, and to not let the world change you from who you're meant to be. We all come into this world completely whole as babies. We just it takes time and the things that happen to us change that. But we come in as who we are. We really don't change that much. If we're lucky, we just get older, but we don't lose who we are.
Yeah, that circles back earlier to what you were talking about as one gets older, getting that sort of owner's manual for your own life and shaping it.
Filling it out so that you know how you work. And finally, letting go of the things that you'll never do. Really be honest with yourself. I would love a big athletic dog. I would like to jog and run with a big athletic dog. I wanted to do that for a long time. I'm never going to do that. I am never going to be the person who runs with I'm not a runner. I get on the treadmill, sometimes I run, but I'm not a runner. I'm not going to want to get up every morning and go, yes, let's go jogging. If you're a runner, I apologize. I do cardio like that. I don't enjoy it. I'm never going to enjoy it. There's not going to be a magic moment where I'm going to suddenly go, yes, this is a good idea. I'm going to do it because it's healthy for me. I'm not going to do it because I want to.
It feels like penance.
It does, right?
Yeah, terrible. Sorry.
It feels like you're being punished for waking up.
Yeah.
If you run first thing in the morning, it feels punishing. Now, if running feels good to you, though, it doesn't. And that's the kind of thing. It's like figure out what is truly makes you happy. You have to do some things that don't make you happy. You have to exercise because it's healthy for you and it's good for your body. And it's also an antidepressant, a natural antidepressant. But find the exercise that works for you. I love martial arts. That really works for me. Filipino martial arts. But I know other people, I like lifting weights, but I don't like it as much as I like martial arts. And so how much time do you spend where?
Sure. And though unfortunately we have time for one last question.
Ah, okay.
So I thought I'd end on a fun note, and the question is from Bree, who asks, why do you have 3 calendars on the wall behind you? Specifically, why 3?
There are far more calendars around my office than you can see. I have a serious thing for calendars. I'm not sure why. Initially, it was an easy way to get visual references for research. Like when I was first creating my shapeshifters, I would get calendars with tigers on them or wolves on them. And so I'm very, very visually oriented. Very visually oriented. Anybody who tells you that only men are just hasn't met enough people. That's all I can tell you. I am incredibly visually oriented, more than any man I've ever met. And so for me, a picture helps me inspire me. It always has from the very beginning. When I was in early high school, I persuaded someone to give me the cover of their 17 magazine because the picture was was an actor, and I just, as soon as I saw his face, I said, I know what I want to write. My first vampire story was based on the inspiration from that picture. And she gave me the cover. She says, you have to promise you'll actually write a story. I said, I promise. And I did. So I know that visuals help me. So I used to get calendars just because there's so many beautiful pictures in a small space of time, and it's economical to buy. But then I had all these calendars, and I felt guilty having them just for visuals, so I started putting them up. And I started, sometimes I'll put, like, if that year my goal is to be stronger, I will put up an animal, I'll get a calendar of lions or something. Or if I want to do more running that year, more cardio, I'll see if I can find one. It's hard to find a whole cheetah calendar, but cheetahs are always about running. I'll try to find an animal that would inspire me to do what I want to do that year. I usually have at least one dog calendar because dogs remind me to follow your heart, to do what makes you happy, and to not be anxious about it. Dogs don't sit there and go, oh, they left me. They're never coming back. They feel that way when you come through the door, like you've been gone forever, but they don't. They're in the moment. So dogs remind me to be in the moment. And tigers are about boundaries. So whatever I'm working on at the time, I'll get calendars to remind me of that. And but it started because it was an easy visual.
Thank you so much, Laurel. What an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
To our audience members, thank you for participating in this Q&A. We're very excited about this new series. If you still haven't purchased a copy of Laurel's new series, A Terrible Fall of Angels, you could do so in the link below with the green.
Yes, we can all, like...
But thank you, everybody, so much. We hope you enjoy your time. Once again, Laurel, thank you. Sabir, thank you for moderating this event.
Thank you, Laurel. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. It was great being here. Great taking questions. Sorry that we couldn't take more. It was really fun. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a good evening. Take care.
Bye.